Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be playing the Wood Elves, and I'm going to be facing off against the Empire. So let's go ahead and jump right into my army composition. So as far as my front line goes, I've kind of actually been a fan of kind of mixing the formations like this, because more often than not, they usually just end up in some sort of a blob. So it's actually worked out pretty well for me. But anyways, I have the Eternal Guards with shields. These guys are pretty solid infantry line. They're shielded with the high-quality silver shield. They do have low armor, but against the low-tier Empire infantry like swordsmen, halberdiers, those type of troops, they can usually stand toe-to-toe for quite some time, especially considering they have 40 plus melee defense. On top of that, I kind of have them mixed in with war dancers. So kind of when I get them all in that big frontline blob, these guys will cut through swordsmen really, really fast. And swordsmen are a very, very popular pick in this matchup. So I think having, a group or two of war dancers is usually worth it. So you can see Eternal Guards here, war dancers here, and one more group of Eternal Guards. In the secondary line, of course, no Wood Elf army for me would be complete without Treekin. These guys are just absolute monsters. I mean, the magic damage isn't as pertinent in this matchup, but still, they just, with that physical resistance, it takes forever for them to get killed. So even if your front line, which is mostly Elves, the Eternal Guards, and War Dancers, is crumbled, these guys will usually hold the line for quite some time, allowing your missile units and other backline stuff to really do their job. On top of that, I got a Branch Wraith. He has the Lifeblood, or Earthblood, and then he also has the Pendulum. So you guys will get to see that this game. I had a lot of fun with it. So he only has 2 abilities, and that's something that's cool about the Branch Wraith. If Pendulum ever becomes a meta thing and, something that people bring, he could be a pretty good choice. And he does provide the Smoke and Mirrors, which gives your entire army 6% speed, which definitely does not hurt. In the back, I do have Eternal Guards here and here. So these ones you'll notice don't have shields because essentially I'm going to be using them for backline protection. So I have one group here and one group here, and they'll just be protecting the flanks of these Glade Guards and, plugging in as needed. Lastly, I have a Waystalker here, and then of course I got Mel Gibson here. He's ready to go. He's got his hounds. He's all business, guys. So as far as my opponent's army composition goes, he has a pretty interesting army, more of an anti-tree army actually. So he brought handgunners, which obviously aren't going to do well in the missile exchange with the Wood Elves, but they will do quite well at gunning down the Treekin, and if I had Durthu or other units like that, or a Tree Man, they would be very good. But in this particular army composition I brought, they'll be okay because they'll be able to get good line of sight on the Treekin without being obstructed. But still, I think that missile units may have been better, but who knows. So he has handgunners here. He's got spearmen across the line. He also has Sigmar's sons back here and spearmen. So very typical, against the Wood Elves. The spearmen are okay. They do have an anti-large bonus. They're shielded, can take missile fire and make pretty good fodder. And, the Eternal Guards have fairly low weapon strength, so usually low-tier infantry can hang with them for some time, but these spearmen will get cut to shreds by the War Dancers. In the back line, he's got some fancy business going on. He's got a General of the Empire, decided not to go in the air, but he does have potions. He has a Bright Wizard with the Flaming Sword of Ruin, so definitely a good choice there, as well as a Fireball. On top of that, he has Demogryph Knights with Halberds for their anti-large. Again, can be very good against trees and, those type of units. And he also brought the Knights of the Blazing Sun, so that with the Flaming Sword of Ruin is going to be pretty scary. Lastly, he does have some Free Company Militia, actually, so I'm not sure how he's going to use these. I'm actually quite eager to see if he's able to put them to good effect. He's got some Spearmen and then a Luminarch. So I'm really, really happy I didn't bring Durthu because this thing just hits like an absolute truck. Even though Durthu, I believe, does have some magic resistance, it still hits very, very hard, as it does have 1,500 weapon strength, which is pretty insane. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So right now, I'm advancing on him. Of course, he does have the siege superiority, so I don't really have a choice there. But you can see the Luminarch taking a shot at some of the Treekin, and it actually was kind of underwhelming. I mean, it hit the Treekin and killed one model, but the HP damage wasn't that bad, so I was completely fine with that. You can see my archers are taking some shots here, and as soon as I'm in range, I'll just have them start targeting these handgunners here. The handgunners, though, very unfortunately for me, are targeting my War Dancers, it looks like. So very well played on my opponent's part, kind of immediately identifying that weakness, although it looks like he did target the Eternal Guards here, which isn't going to be good. But you can see those Glade Guards shooting into these handgunners are getting a very, very good exchange here, whereas the handgunners are getting some decent shots, some on these Eternal Guards and a few on the Treekin, but nothing devastating. And you can see Mel Gibson uses his hounds over here and does a pretty good job there. I'm actually happy with that ability. It seems to do a little bit of damage. So just continuing to rain fire down. I did use the Arrows of Kurnus, and I have my Waystalker focusing the Bright Wizard. If I were you guys, that would just be my #1 priority, is having your Waystalker target wizards, because they're low armor, gets extremely high missile damage, and can just kind of sit there and take pot shots at them all day. So aside from that, my opponent is mobilizing his cab forces. You can see his Demogryph Knights going around one flank and his Knights of the Blazing Sun going around the other. So you can see the Pendulum in there comes in and does pretty huge damage. I didn't get the best angle on it because I forgot at what point in the battle it took place, but it essentially waved and brought these guys to wavering and then broke them. So now the War Dancers are able to break through back to the missile line, which is very, very good for me. It also did substantial damage to the Sigmar Sons and other troops like that. So his Knights of the Blazing Sun are coming around the flank here, but they were being cut off by these Eternal Guard here. And also Orion, you can see the Arrow of Kurnus doing massive damage. And Orion, of course, is just an absolute monster. So he's going to get in there, and he actually breaks their charge. Now they're just taking all this focused fire from these Blade Guards, and they're essentially broken and routed off because he does cause terror. So Orion is just such a good utility hero. So over here, the Waystalker, he's obstructed currently, but the Demogryph Knights came in, got a little rear charge in these Treekin, probably trying to use their anti-large armor piercing, and they're now wrapped up by these Eternal Guards with spears. So this 450-something resources is now essentially just shutting down these Demogryph Knights. They're shaken, they're getting their armor pierced by these guys, and it's just a great situation. You can see my opponent trying to path through, but still, you know, these guys are essentially wavering and will probably break shortly once this Waystalker joins in. The Knights of the Blazing Sun have also been routed off on the flank. The missile units, in conjunction with the very cheap Eternal Guard, are able to fend off these very, very expensive Knights of the Blazing Sun. And over here, the Lord, the General of the Empire, still steady, but he's fighting some War Dancers, which is a good situation for him, considering how armored he is. But still, you know, this is obviously not looking good. His backline has been penetrated. That Pendulum, I wish I could have shown you guys that again, but it was actually very, very good. And you can see the Luminarch of Heish getting in there and laying the dumpster in on some of these trees, but they're still steady, they're still fighting. But yeah, the Pendulum actually did, you know, 20 to 30% HP damage across most of his front line. So that was a very, very, you know, game-breaking moment, because my War Dancers, these troops right here, were able to break through and just crumble his entire handgunner line, which, had they lasted a bit longer, could have made a big difference and maybe worn down some of my front line a bit. But you can see the Templehof has routed. He has a few troops here, but the last of his troops are being closed in on by the Eternal Guard. So very well played to my opponent. I actually wish I could have watched these Free Company Militia a little bit. Let's go ahead and take a look at how they did in the breakdown screen here. So the Luminarch definitely was a little underwhelming, but that's largely because the composition I brought didn't have a lot of great targets for it. But still, it was cool to see it in action. He did get a nice little net on some of my troops, but still, he probably should have saved the net for when my War Dancers broke through, so he could have netted them down, maintained, and then had his handgunners just shoot right into that exposed pocket. The Knights of the Blazing Sun and the Demis, though, they really just did not provide value. I mean, honestly, it might have just been more worth, you know, charging these Knights of the Blazing Sun into my War Dancers in the front line and just trying to run through them that way and support his spear line. The Free Company Militia actually did good, comparatively speaking. They racked up a lot more kills than the handgunners, so perhaps, you know, their melee stats were the reason why. I didn't really get a chance to watch them, but War Dancers did good, 94 and 60 kills respectively. Treekin, obviously they're not going to get a lot of kills with their low melee attack, but they did a good job. And of course, Mel Gibson, you guys saw, was an absolute hero in shutting down these Knights of the Blazing Sun. So good games to my opponent, Rick Wrecked. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that elf cast. Have an excellent night, and take care.